In March of 2020, I unexpectedly had a faith crisis. At the time, things were starting to shut down to help slow the spread of COVID-19. Because of that, social gatherings were postponed, modified, or canceled, and classes were moved to an online format. For the most part, I could handle the drastic overnight changes that were taking place. But what did it for me was when I discovered that my neighbor was spreading false rumors about me. I felt that there were many things that were being taken away from me because of the pandemic, and the only thing that the pandemic couldn't take away from me was my reputation. And now, that was seemingly being taken away. When this happened, I asked myself, if there is a God, why did he allow this to happen? As soon as I said that, I felt that the spiritual anchor that was grounding me was suddenly gone. I didn't know what to believe in, or even how to proceed. But after working through my doubts and concerns, my faith crisis came to an end. Reflecting upon my faith crisis, I have wondered, what does religion mean to others? Why do some people leave the faith they grew up in? And what is it they get out of religion? I'm your host, Jack Taggart, and on this episode, I talk to 4 people from various backgrounds and ask what their religious background is, why is it that they believe what they believe, and how does religion bring meaning and purpose into their lives? This is my search for meaning and purpose. In most faith traditions, there have been those who have laid down their lives for their faith, and even today there are those who go down as martyrs. When that happens, we assume that it is a sign of their dedication to what they believe in, and rightfully so. However, I believe a more common and less glamorized sign of dedication is the time and service one gives to their faith. This can range from helping in church services to giving up a professional career to fulfill a ministerial role. To better understand why someone would be so dedicated to their faith and forego a professional career, I talked to a man who has served in the Hare Krishna movement for 52 years.
My name is Charidas. This is how I find my meaning and purpose. I met the first Krishna missionaries in Australia in 1970. They had just come a month before I arrived. I'd been to India already. I went overland from Istanbul. But I ran out of money, and so I went to Australia to get a job so I could finance further travels. I was coming back from a construction site in North Sydney, being spewed out of the subway, downtown George Street, Wynyard Station, and a little flash of color caught at the corner of my eye, and I looked, and there was a Westerner dressed with dhoti, an Indian robe, kurta, shaved head, and he had a magazine, the Bhakti Godhead magazine of the Hare Krishna movement. And I was taken aback because I'd been to India looking for just that. Hadn't made any significant connections in India, and I had never expected to make my spiritual connection in Australia. I'd just gone there cynically to make money and for no other purpose, with no other expectation. And so it just so happened that he and another missionary had rented a place and using it as a temple within walking distance of where I and my wife, we weren't married at that time, were staying. So we had been to India, both of us. But in those days, you didn't have the interconnectivity, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have cell phones. And so it was just hit or miss. And we both missed as far as making a meaningful spiritual connection. We took advantage. After work, we'd go. They had programs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then every Hare Krishna temple worldwide, there's about 840 of them, have what they call the Sunday Love Feast. So there's a talk, there's some chanting, there's a vegetarian feast, and they had one. So we would go. We wouldn't never miss Sunday because of the food and the extra people that would come. So after about 6 months, we'd earned the original amount of money we'd intended on earning, but we'd lost our taste for superficially skimming cultures. We wanted to go more deeply into issues like who am I, where am I from, what's the purpose of life. And Krishna consciousness seemed to be feeding that aspect, that spiritual aspect. And so I didn't want to break the connection. And so for the first time in my life, I had lost my attraction to physical travel. I wanted to do the inner journey. And so we decided to join the temple at least for a few weeks, and that turned into 52 years.
At this point in the interview, the audio crapped out, but this is what Charles said when I asked what made the Hare Krishna missionary stand out to him that made him want to learn more.
It was just like yesterday. He said God is a person. And I'm sure I'd heard that before, God is a person. I'm sure that wasn't the first time I heard it. But coming from the lips of someone who clearly had a relationship, it almost sounds trite to say personal relationship, because we hear that so much from Christians. You need a personal relationship with God. But what's missing is that most people don't know anything about God as a person. But here was someone who did seem to have a personal connection with God and a specific idea of what God looked like, what his name was, the spiritual world. So I'm sure I'd heard that before. God is a person. But it had an impact. It was almost as if I was hearing it for the first time. That changed everything. That means a person has individual likes, he has dislikes. That means if I'm creating an image of God and my purpose is to reflect the personality of my Creator, then I can't do anything I want. It's no longer laissez-faire, I need to find out what my Heavenly Father wants for me. It meant that if I wanted to step into my purpose in life, it would be helpful for me to find out more about this God who was a person. So he advised me at that time to get a set of beads. They're what we call japa beads. They have 108 beads. And chant one mantra, one Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. It's 3 names of God. Hare is the feminine, Krishna is the all-attractive, and then Rama is the spiritual pleasure and spiritual strength. So it's 3 words and a 16-word formula. It's called the Maha Mantra, the greatest of all chants, the most powerful of all ways to acknowledge and recognize God. And practitioners, devotees, what we call ourselves devotees, we do a set number of rounds in the morning, 108 times that mantra. He said if you chant 1 round, 108 times a day, which takes about 10 minutes, for a week, he said you'll feel closer to God than you ever have before with all the hymns and all the church going. So I did. I went out and got some beads and I chanted 5 minutes a day, and God was more present at the end of that week than it had ever been before in my life. And so I felt I owed it to myself to continue chanting, continue inquiring.
I believe at times I believe I felt God before. But after a while, I feel, at least in my experience, that kind of feeling it initially goes away, but it didn't felt as strongly at times. So after being part of this the Hare Krishna movement for 50 years, what keeps you going? Why do you keep on doing it?
Unfortunately, many religious people, that's what keeps them going, when they think they've found God. And they may or may not have. The heart is deceitful and wicked. So a lot of times you think you found God, and it may or may not have been, because you're dealing on your mind, your emotions. You're not based on any objective standards. So, maybe Hitler felt God too. Maybe Stalin felt God. I don't know. They may have made the same claims anyway. You've heard Bob Dylan's song, everybody feels that God's on their side. So I also have felt God. But for me, it's just a little drop of nectar that God's giving me, so I go back to the practice. See, the thing is, in Western countries, you always ask, what do you believe? Well, I believe this, and every once in a while I feel like I get a jolt. You know what I'm saying? But in our culture, the right question, the wrong question, that's what you believe. The right question is, what's your practice? So Our practice is deity worship, devotion, festivals, vegetarian, offer your vegetarian food, chant on your beads early. That's my practice. And much of it is just routine. Many times you don't feel like doing it, but you do it anyway because it's your practice. It's yoga. You know, you don't always feel like getting up and being loving and kind to your wife every single day, but you fake it till you make it. You know what I'm saying? And that's why love is not an emotion. Love is not a feeling. Love is a function of character. You do it when you don't feel like it. You do it when you do feel like it, and you do it when you don't feel like it. So when you have the practice, you're a devotee, and you're practicing what we call bhakti, and you get those moments. First of all, the odds of them being genuine are much greater because day in and day out, you are connecting with God through His name, through His food, in His temple, with His devotees, and through the Scripture. So with all that going on, the firings, you know, the links that fire in between each other, the neural fiber firings, they're all God-centered. And so probably the composite is going to be the same. You know what I'm saying? But if you just believe something and you get one of those moments, first of all, you don't know if it's God-centered. You don't really know for sure. And secondly, if that's all you've got to sustain you, good luck. You know? Yeah. Because, you know, even in a practice, those moments are few and far between, you know. If you get a moment like that every 6 months, that's pretty good.
Sharu and I had a wonderful discussion about the theology of the Hare Krishna movement. But when the conversation turned to what God expects of us, he said this.
God's not going to come to you when you're in the comfort zone. Comfort zone is not a place to realize God. You have to put it on the line. You have to have a big enough dream that you cannot accomplish it yourself. It has to be a God-sized dream, and without God's help, you can't accomplish it. So if you want to see God in your life, you have to get out of the boat. So that was the general reason why we felt we didn't want to live the rest of our lives in the comfort of the LA temple. We were doing a good job. We had our food, we had a car, we had everything. We didn't take a salary, but we had everything we needed, you know. And it was okay. But we wanted God to be more part of our lives than what that kind of a situation would provide. And so we always knew we'd do something. And then part of what I did as a life membership director was I rented time on a radio station out of Pasadena. Every Saturday morning from 8 till 2, they had all the Indian programs for the Indian trade. Grocery stores, travel agencies, they would sponsor shows. And mostly they just played Bollywood music or something. But we had the Krishna show, and we had a devotional show right in the middle of all that. And it worked. You know, people would call in, people would become aware of the temple. They would know me, and they would, you know, ask me by name when they came. And so we built, it served its purpose. We built the Life Membership Program into a very robust program with good donations, good financial support. But after a couple of years, I thought, well, again, I personally didn't want to do that my whole life. And I thought for the same $1,000 a month, we were renting time in Los Angeles, we could actually cover the purchase of a smaller rural radio station. Also, I'm a missionary at heart. And so when I'm not out there talking to people who are distributing books, I feel bad. I actually feel bad. You know, when I first joined the movement, we did books every day, but Sundays we take off. So Sundays I'd feel bad because you just get used to that energy, you know, that energy. And Sundays I would just always wonder why I feel so down. And I realized that preaching is really life, you know. And I was thinking, how can I be preaching all the time? 24 hours a day. And then I realized radio, you know, even when you're sleeping, the message is going out. So if you listen to 1480 KHKN, there's songs, there's dramas, there's all kinds of shows, but I'll on there a lot. You know, I have like 300 talks, and I add whenever I make new talks of the podcast, I'll just take the MP3 down and put it on the playlist. So, empowers me to get the word out a lot more than I'm physically able to do.
How has your faith defined you?
It defines me as a spirit soul, part and parcel of God, servant of the Lord. And I was fortunate enough to get it connected to the right ancient, authentic tradition of devotion, which has been going for thousands and thousands of years, even before Christ saw the light of day, but which is totally consonant with the teachings of Christ: love God with all your heart and all your soul. So I feel, as an individual, as a person, I feel really lucky. I don't know what I might have done to deserve this, but I love my life. I love the things I do. It suits me. Every single day, I'm fulfilled by communicating, interviews like this, going on the radio, doing festivals. You know, I could not imagine a better life, and I have only God to thank for that.
Overall, my conversation with Sharu went really well. And after talking with him, I can tell that the past 52 years of dedication he has given has definitely brought meaning and purpose to his life. Sharu didn't talk too much about his life before he joined the Hare Krishna movement, which I find kind of interesting, in that changing religions can be a major life choice one makes. To better understand why someone would want to change religions, I interview a man who was raised in an observant Jewish household, but decided to become a Christian.
My name is Corey Nathan, and this is how I find my meaning and purpose in life. I was born in a observant Jewish family. We went to an Orthodox synagogue. I am I guess technically second generation American. I'm very close with my grandmother, who was born in Ukraine. They refer to it as Russia, but geographically they refer to it as the Ukraine. But so a lot of my family is from there. My mother's side of the family is her father's side of the family is from Romania. Mother's side of the family from Poland. So we're very connected to our story as Jews. I grew up. My family's all from Brooklyn. I grew up more on the Jersey side, but yeah, we were very connected to our Jewish heritage, and we were active throughout the year. We kept kosher. We observed all the different holidays, and we were very active in our synagogue. So that's my heritage. That's my background, and I still identify very much as a Jew. There are certain things like one of my favorite times of year is when we do the Seder, which is the organized dinner you do. It's like a kind of a set of rituals where you retell the Passover story. So there's still things that we observe, even though I'm a born again Bible thumping Christian now.
Although Corey grew up an Orthodox Jew, in his 20s, Corey became more secular in his practice of Judaism. As Corey and his wife were contemplating on what their future was going to be, Corey had a business mentor who gave him business books. Eventually, that mentor started to give him, and I use the words of Corey, Jesus books. After pushing back on being given Jesus books, Corey was encouraged to read them, even if it was just for educational purposes. And so, for the next 6 to 8 months, Corey read ferociously on any Jesus book he could find.
So at the same time, I was looking back into other philosophies that I'd studied in the past, other religions, and I just wanted to really think through these things. And finally, I hadn't read the New Testament at that point. And so finally, I brought myself to crack open because I thought, like, a Jew like me, especially with my family's history, if I even crack open the New Testament to read it, like, the God of Israel didn't strike me down. I read the New Testament. I actually started in the book of James. That little short letter kind of wrestles with some specific theological issues like faith versus works that I was grappling with. And then after I got through James, I just started at Matthew 1, the first gospel account, and just read straight through, and in particular, chapter 5 of Matthew, Jesus gives what I recognized as a Devar Torah, which is what a rabbi often does after you read from the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. The rabbi gives an explanation, what we call a Devar Torah. So Jesus was giving a Devar Torah to his listeners, to his followers. And what that was, what I didn't put two and two together, was that Jesus was giving the Sermon on the Mount. And that was it. It was just the most profound of our Torah I'd ever read, I'd ever heard. And it really pulled me in. So by the time, it took me about a day or two to read through the whole New Testament. And whether it was that night or the next night, I just felt really compelled that, like, I believe this thing. Like this, it made sense, you know, and as I say in a couple different faith traditions, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. On a heart level, I felt it emotionally. On an intellectual, with my mind, it made sense to me. Obviously, on a transcendent level, just so many dots were connected. So, yeah, as they say, I gave my life to the Lord at that point. But to me, that's almost cliche to say it that way, because to me, it wasn't so much. There was definitely a discontinuation in my past and my heritage, and we might get into that or maybe not, but, you know, because once you accept Jesus as Messiah, that's very different than contemporary Judaism, obviously. But for me, there was a lot of continuation, not just discontinuation, but continuation. So I don't think of it so much as a conversion as a progression for me.
Once you decide to convert to Christianity, how did your family react or respond?
Now, there were some people in the family that I know objected to it, that we never, frankly, had the opportunity to have the conversation because they just didn't want to bring it up with me. You know, some people that I grew up going to synagogue with, same thing. You know, once I became a Christian, they didn't care. They didn't want to have the conversation. They didn't care. Our relationship was done. I was not accepted anymore. So there was that reaction, and I wish I did get to have the conversation, not to try to convince them that I was right or try to convince them to become a Christian, but like, I've come to value relationships over and above even the deepest theological convictions. And once we're willing to break our relationships, to sever relationships, you know, and we're seeing it now in politics. We're seeing it now, you know, somebody who's wearing a MAGA hat isn't invited to Thanksgiving dinner, or somebody, you know, who voted for Biden isn't invited to the other side's Thanksgiving dinner. So we're seeing that now in politics, and I just think that's a tragedy. So we can't even talk about this. Or let's not even talk about this. Let's talk about the Mets. You don't want to talk about that? That's fine. But our relationship is, and I can make a theological case for that if you're a non-Christian Jew, if you don't believe in Jesus as Messiah, that's fine. But you still believe in Tikkun Olam. Like, we Jews are doing something here in the world, right? And as a Jewish Christian, I'm still a Jew. I just happen to believe that Messiah came, and his name was Yeshua ben Yosef, right? So we believe something. A lot of what we believe is similar. That God is doing something in His creation, and we are a part of it, right? I just want to be able to have that conversation. But more to the point of your question, my dad had the strongest reaction. Not initially. Initially, internally, I'm sure he had that reaction, but he was very reserved in how he was responding to me. Thanksgiving morning 2000, we took a red eye home from LA, landed back in Jersey. They were still living in the house where I grew up. And we had this 2-hour-long conversation, but he's very clinical, very analytical in his approach to that conversation. But a month later, he wrote me this 10-page single-spaced letter. Probably took him the month to write it before he sent it to me. That's why I got it a month later. And it was outlining all the reasons why it was imperative that I reverse course on this decision about being a Christian. And he has a little bit of a background as a historian. That's what he studied in school. He's very engaged, like an engaged citizen, very passionate about his political positions. So he attacked it from like history, politics, religion, obviously. Because I grew up, you know, we were very observant. Our family was going to an Orthodox synagogue. So there was that. Also just as a family. So he approached it from a very emotional side. And what my filial obligation was. But that was the beginning of something. It was the beginning of a conversation that in many ways we're still having. This is 20-something years ago. It's because I took paragraph by paragraph, and I'm not exaggerating, it was literally 10 pages, single-spaced. Paragraph by paragraph, I started responding to him. I responded to him via email. And then when he got a response, he'd respond to me. Then I'd have to respond to that. But in the meantime, I was still working my way through the letter. So it was this, after 3.5 years, my original pastor, Pastor Tom, may he rest in peace, he said, hey, did you ever print that stuff out? I'd love to read it. So I printed it out for Pastor Tom, and his son is actually one of my best buddies out here. He's currently a professor at Fuller. But Pastor Tom had me printed out. It was literally like 200-300 pages.
Wow.
It was quite a back and forth. So that was my dad. But my dad originally, his first reaction, he won't admit to this now, but I know it to be true, that he considered the possibility of doing what's called sitting Shiva, which is the ritual that Orthodox Jew, or a lot of Jews go through when somebody in the immediate family dies. So it was that harsh of a reaction from him. But we've evolved over the years, so to speak. We've continued the conversation. He came to the conclusion eventually that his relationship with me was more important than any theological conviction that he had. So we continued with the conversation itself was like the nourishment to keep that relationship going. And like I said, it's in a lot of ways, it was the seeds of what became the podcast and the larger program that we do, talk politics and religion without killing each other. Obviously, I can't sit here and share with you like the hundreds and hundreds of pages, if not thousands of pages at this point, that my dad and I, not to mention the, thousands of hours around a fire drinking a glass of wine with him and talking about this stuff. So I'm not going to go through that all, but all that to say, relationships like that are a gift because it forces you to really wrestle with existential questions, deep theological problems, and to figure out for yourself, to suss out for yourself, like, what is it that I believe? And then go do your homework, because you can't just like sit there, and come up with all the answers yourself. There's thousands and thousands of years of wisdom on this stuff. There's great scholarship out there right now. So dig into that stuff. Who is, if as Christians and Jews, we're supposed to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Well, put that into the search for the answers to this stuff with all of your, don't outsource your mind. That's not loving the Lord with your mind. What is resonating with your soul? What resonates on a transcendent level, right? What can you, sometimes it is heart, soul, mind, and strength. So physically, sometimes you can feel these things, like palpably it aligns, heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I had to deal with my heart too, because my heart was telling me the easy way out was just tell him what he wants to hear. But the heart is your emotions are a funny thing, because you can go the path of least resistance straight into hell, but sometimes you have to walk uphill. You have to fight against your heart's gravity. You have to fight against that to it's, in some ways, it's the easier path, because, you do that work up front against what you kind of, impulsively want in order to get to, Buddhists might call it euphoria, or I don't know, but to get to the other side, to get to that more transcendent, proper answer. So, I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent here, but that's love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I love diving into this stuff, and here's how I'll end that answer is, at the end of the day, I care about truth. So by digging into this great scholarship and really thinking it through with integrity, so that these things hold together, so that the coherence that runs through heart, soul, mind, and strength of who we are as human beings, transcendently, if it all holds together with integrity, and there's another set of answers that are true, I'm willing to submit to that. But right now, everything I've studied allows me to hold on to the conclusion that Jesus lived, died, and rose again, and he's a Messiah, right? So at the end of the day, I'm committed to truth. But if there was another, and when you enter into an earnest exploration of these big questions, you're risking the possibility that you might come out the other side with a different set of beliefs. But if what you believe is true, you'll come out the other side with a much more nuanced, perhaps, understanding of those beliefs, but much deeper foundation, much deeper roots, you know?
What do you get out of your faith, and what do you hope that your faith does or gives to others or benefits others?
What comes to mind is that Jewish expression, we might have talked about this before too, is tikkun olam, healing the world, right? Because I think that opens the door for a lot of us to participate in it. So whether someone believes in my particular prescription and my interpretation of how I'm reading scripture, or even if, it's going to sound unorthodox to say the least, but even if somebody doesn't submit to the authority of scripture, I want to leave the door open for them to at least participate in the project of God. And the project of God is, he's the creator, whether we believe in him or not. It's like, he doesn't need us to believe in him or any individual to believe in him for him to be God. So what I hope people get from me is like, hey, can we agree on what's good? Can we agree that truth is good? Can we agree that we can work together to heal suffering, to heal some ills in the world, that we can work together to bring in more of the fruit of the Spirit, even if you don't necessarily submit to, this concept that I believe in called, the Holy Spirit. I think you can believe that, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control are good things, whether you believe in whether you believe in the Bible or not. So I like folks to get that. Yeah, that's what I hope folks get if they're hanging. If nothing else, like, let's hang out, let's enjoy some bourbon, or whatever, water, tea, whatever. For those who don't drink, whatever your favorite liquid enjoyment is. Yeah. Let's hang out and drink some of it and talk about these big things together. And we won't get it all figured out, but we'll get a little bit figured out just for ourselves, And I think that's good. That's good. We'll have some fun doing it. And that itself, I think, is a little piece of tikkun olam in our little corner of the world.
I found Corey's story to be inspiring. Not everyone would have the strength to maintain their faith in the face of opposition, even when it would be easier to tell people what they want to hear. However, unpleasant religious experiences aren't just limited to converts. There are those who feel different or don't fit into the religion they grew up in. Some of these people leave, but others stay, even though it's hard. To understand why someone would want to stay in a religion in which they feel different from others, I interview my friend Christian Gonzalez, who's had this experience. And just an FYI, Christian is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or also known as the Mormon Church. As a disclaimer, I am also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
This is Christian Gonzalez, and this is how I find my meaning and purpose in life. So growing up, I don't know, you see those people, and I feel like there's a typical look to our religion, to our families, and how it's supposed to look, And I didn't exactly grow up with that. I had a different upbringing, and while we still believed in everything that, that other people in the church did, we did things differently. A lot of the kids my age are just kind of around, when I was growing up, it was black and white. It was like, this is good or this is bad. And there was no nuance to it. There was no touch of grays or anything like that. And my parents and my brothers, everything around me kind of taught me, no, the world's a little more complicated than that. We may believe a certain thing and we may believe this thing to be truth or good, but sometimes bad things happen. And we're humans and we don't make the best decisions. So even though we know the best and we know good, we don't always choose it just because of the stuff or our circumstances or things that weren't our choice, the circumstances we were born in. It's different. And so I don't know, I feel like growing up I saw a lot of people who were just like, oh no, that's bad, or oh, that's good. Just very, very quick to that. And that wasn't me. Some people think of our religion or our church as being sheltered, and my dad and my mother weren't quite like that. They wanted me to kind of experience and know what the world kind of looks like, while still holding on to my beliefs and my values and truths. So I don't know. It's been a different ride. I feel like I don't match what people typically think of when they think of a member of the Church of Jesus Christ. I think I look a little different. I think I act different. But it's been good, you know. Ultimately, the church has been helping me. It's helped me throughout my entire life. You know, I don't know how I would have handled some of the stuff that I've gone through if I didn't have the church.
Okay. Could you kind of describe maybe a little bit more? Because he talks about how your parents stated things differently, and there was kind of this look.
Yeah.
So could you maybe elaborate a little bit more, I guess, to those? Because I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely.
for those who are not familiar with it, could you kind of elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. So I don't know. There's I don't know. Off the bat, I'm not a Disney fan. And I feel like that's something that gets pumped in, or is like, oh, their culture or whatever. And obviously everyone likes Disney. You know, it doesn't matter if you're not a member of the church or not. But I didn't grow up on Disney. You know, I grew up on a Van Helsing. You know, I grew up on these other these horror movies or stuff like that. Like I saw the movie The Thing at a really young age, like a lot younger than I should have been. And I don't know. I saw a lot of things. And I was kind of exposed to a lot of things in just a really, I don't know, younger age. And my parents, you know, they were still there. It's not like they weren't there or anything like that. They just weren't helicopter parents, you know. They were just like, oh, Christian was gonna go do this or he's gonna go do that, and we talk about it like later or whatever.
Throughout our interview, Christian talked about other things that he felt that made him feel different from other members of the church. However, like many members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Christian made the decision to serve a mission, and you probably know these guys as the guys in white shirts and ties knocking on doors. For many members of the church, serving a mission is seen as a great and noble thing that a member could do, and most members who serve a mission look upon their time very fondly. However, the same can't be said for Christian. This next part, I just want to clarify that this is Christian's experience and is not representative of all mission experiences.
Looking at a mission and a missionary, I looked at it and I was like, these are perfect people. You know, I didn't factor in the age or anything like that. I was like, you know, these people are out here and they're sacrificing 2 years of their life, which is like forever. And they're sacrificing 2 years of their life. They're going away from their families. Some people are going just a couple states over. Some people are going across the freaking world to go and preach something that they believe in, you know, something that they want to share with others. The noblest of causes is the reason why they're doing this, because they really believe in this and they want others to have this beautiful truth that helps them through their day-to-day lives. These are the reasons I'm thinking people go out on a mission. And when I got out there, there was a handful of people who were serving because of that reason, at least the people I ran into. So I went to the MTC. I was there for 6 weeks, and there was some great spiritual moments there, some great things that just kind of clicked in my head, where I was like, oh, this is what we really believe, and this is why we believe it. Some really great moments. I had a really good MTC experience, and it wasn't like it was perfect. I didn't get along too well with my companion or anybody else, but it was a good experience. You know, I still enjoyed it. When I got out into the mission, that's when I ran into the people who just didn't, they were just out there, you know, and so they, I don't know why a lot of them were out there, and I don't think a lot of them knew why they were out there, and because they didn't know, because they didn't have a purpose, they did kind of whatever they wanted, and here are people now who are getting money, who are getting, you know, they don't have to work for their money, they have some supervision, but they're being trusted to do something good. And I will tell you for sure that a large majority of them weren't doing good stuff. They were doing stuff that was bad, you know, just straight up not good. And so that it was a shell shock to me, you know, going out there with these people who didn't. It was clear they didn't care about the church. It was clear they didn't care about the Lord or a God or anything like that. They were just kind of out there for themselves. And that was shell shock to me, because I still had that little, 6-year-old self. I still had that 8-year-old self in me that was like, no, these people are good. They're noble. They want to do what's right. And ultimately they were, they were teenagers. We were teenagers. I was a teenager who was just trying to figure out what to do. So my mission experience overall was just something else entirely, realizing more that people weren't perfect and neither was I. It was, I think for a number of reasons, there's some other stuff that came up too. And so for like all that, I was like, you know what? I don't know, kind of put me in a bit of depression. And so I ended up like just not being able to, or not wanting to be there with them, I got bullied real bad on the mission field. Like real bad. I can think of 2 elders who treated me right. And then no sisters acted the way they should. Not a single sister. There was one, I take that back. There was one that I had a lot of respect for. She was a saint. But all the other sisters were just, it's like, what are you doing out here?
Yeah.
And then the elders, like I said, they treated me really badly. Almost all of them.
But after this experience, I know some people, they can either grow from these horrible experiences or become embittered by it.
Yeah.
Why do you, I guess, maybe try and turn this into, I guess, a positive? Or what motivates you to make this become a positive? And I guess maybe help you understand that it's the people, not the church or not the organization.
We're just humans. I may have been treated like garbage, but I'm sure in times of my life, I've treated people less than they deserved. I think we were 18-year-olds, man. We were 18-year-olds. What did we know? We knew nothing. Even when I get 45 years old, we're just 45 years old. There's so much to learn. There's so much. How could you go through this life and expect to know so well and condone or judge others just as well when there's just so much you don't know? I think the reason why I take this and I choose to grow from it is because, I don't know, I want to be a peacemaker. I want to be someone different in the world. And I want to teach others to do the same. How can I go around telling people, oh, believe in people, they're good ultimately, if I'm bitter about those experiences, if I hold on to them? I can't hold on to this. You can't hold on to these things. And these are minor things. People go through much worse in life than I might ever have to experience. And they still grow from it. They still change. So how can I not? It'd be kind of irresponsible of me to just hold on to these things.
How does your religion bring meaning and purpose in your life?
I had this thought when I was really young, it'd be freaking great if at the end of my life, it was a book. But the book didn't say anything, my name, anywhere, but it was just an account. And each page was an account from somebody else about how this random stranger helped them in this day, or helped them with this, or maybe it wasn't a random stranger, but this person helped them through a hard time. And then at the end of the book, it would be about me. I was that random stranger, or I helped that person through whatever hard time they were going through in their life. And my entire purpose, my entire meaning was made up of how I helped others. That would mean a lot to me. If at the end of everything, I could see just how many people I helped. And whether they recognized it or not. Just knowing that I helped another child of God was just maybe I changed the outcourse or the look on life. Or maybe I just changed that one day or just a moment to be a little brighter. That would give great meaning and purpose to my life.
So far, we've heard from men of faith who've explained how they find meaning and purpose with religion. However, there are those who are part of no religion and don't have any belief in any deity. As we have heard, being part of a religious community and having a belief in a religion is very important, and I might even say even grounding. And I'm a bit curious as to why someone would not want to believe in any religion. To further understand this, I interviewed the chairperson for Atheist Ireland.
My name is Michael Nugent, and this is how I find meaning and purpose in life. Well, I grew up in Ireland in the 1960s and 1970s. I was a child. Ireland then was a very Catholic country. Now, my parents, I would consider them to be liberal Catholics, and almost, I would say, cultural Catholics, in that while they may have, my mother believed in the idea of a God, my dad was more agnostic. But they went to Mass. It was like everyone went to Mass. They brought us to Mass, and by us I mean myself and my siblings. But they always told me, look, when you're old enough to make your own mind up, just make your own mind up. They didn't force religion on us. And I remember when I was in primary school, one Easter, and again the schools are very Catholic schools as well. But I remember one Easter holiday, we were given a project to do over the holidays, and it was to read the Gospels and rewrite them in our own words. And I spent ages doing that because I probably gave too much focus to school and less focus on playing back then. But I remember drawing that. We had copybooks back then. I don't know if they exist still, where you had a space at the top of the page to draw a picture, and then there were lines underneath it where you'd write your story. And so I was writing this story and drawing pictures of the stories as I was doing them, because I used to draw cartoons when I was a child. And I remember halfway through it realising that this Jesus character is like a comic book superhero. So he's kind of like Batman or Superman. He's got all these superpowers and he fights for good, and he has his nemesis in the devil, and he's sent to Earth by his father, which is kind of like Superman being sent from the planet Krypton, and so I kind of thought from that, I thought, well, that's what this is. It's a story. It's a very good story. I don't mean morally good. It's very it's an interesting, exciting story once you see it in that way. But so I saw it as Jesus as essentially being a cartoon character. And so from then on, that's how I saw it. And as I grew older, I probably went through a lengthy phase of saying, once I understood the words, of saying that I'm agnostic rather than atheist, on the basis that you can't be certain that there's no God, until I kind of realised, well, that's really not the test that you should be using, because we can't be certain about anything. I can't be certain that there aren't 50 elephants in the room behind me, but I just can't see them because I'm looking a different way. But I'm pretty certain that I know they are, in real terms, I know that there aren't.
Okay. And if you mind me asking, so how long was that process from I guess, well, obviously when as you were a kid, you were starting, okay, Jesus is more of a cartoon figure, to, okay, maybe I'm not so certain, more agnostic, to now, okay, yeah, I'm an atheist. So how long did that take?
I'd say the agnostic that probably came in either late secondary school or while I was in college, which I'm not sure what the American terminologies are, but college here would be third level education. So it would be while I was in college, I would have been considered myself to be agnostic. There was another big incident in my life then while I was in college, which is my younger brother Billy, who was 19, died in a motorbike crash. And, when you're that age, I was 21, he was 19, that has a huge impact on your life, and you reassess everything. And while it was very traumatic, and obviously my parents were devastated, the whole local community was, because he was very popular in the area. But one of the things that came out of that for me in the long term was just the idea that that we live forever is just seemed nonsensical to me. Didn't seem to be any basis for believing that, given that I'd already had older relatives who had died, and no sign of them coming back and talking to me, no sign of Billy coming back and talking to me, and so I just felt from there two things. One is that I understood the finality of somebody dying, and the second was that the realization that given that there doesn't seem to be any afterlife, that things are going to get better after you die and so on. But I appreciated far better every moment of the actual only life that we know that we do have, which is the life that we're living now. And I, from then on, things that I would have got into a fluster about, day-to-day things that were just annoying, just didn't bother me from then on, just because of that sudden change of perspective.
What do you get out of, being an atheist, so to speak?
Well, I don't really get anything out of it. I mean, it's just observing reality. It's like I don't get anything out of... well, no, actually, no, that's not true. I suppose I do get things out. What I get out of it is the idea that I'm responsible for my own life, the idea that others are responsible for their own lives. They're these kind of foundational things that I get out of it. What I don't get out of it is conclusions. I don't get out of it, well, because I believe there's no God, therefore I must do this, or therefore I must do that, or therefore this is right, or that is wrong. So what I get is the idea of being in charge of my own thinking and my own conscience. And if you look at the World Values Survey and various studies on happiness, what they show is that as individual people, I'm talking about on a global historical basis, well, not historical, say the last 30 years or so, the World Values Survey has been active, is that as individuals move away from survival values and towards self-expression values, that societies move away from traditional religious values and towards secular rational values. And the triggers to those things include investment in health and education and communications technology, democracy, lack of corruption. And one of the key things is control, or at least self-perceived control over your life. And so I find that seems to me to be more reliably achieved through atheism, where you understand that it's up to you to figure out, the best things to do, rather than when somebody is saying to you that the creator of the universe has told them to tell you that you'll go to hell if you do something.
I guess maybe a better question is like, how does, atheism influence your life?
It's a foundational thing. It doesn't affect specific decisions in the sense that I'll decide this because I'm an atheist. But it will affect the process by which I decide things. I will decide things by trying to figure out what's most consistent with the currently best available evidence when I'm studying reality, and I will try to figure out what's most consistent with empathy and compassion and reciprocity and cooperation and fairness and justice when I'm taking moral decisions. So it affects how I think rather than the outcomes that I come to. Because it could well be the case, and often is, that with me coming to conclusions based on that process, that a religious person coming to conclusions based on the idea that the creator of the universe is telling them what to do, will often come up with the same conclusions. Not all the time, and often enough different to make it significant. But like, for example, I'll give you an example of that. Atheist Ireland, we promote atheism and reason to the population. But when we're dealing with the state, we don't promote atheism. We explicitly say we would be as opposed to the state promoting atheism as we are to the state promoting religion. And because of that, we will work together with religious groups who also believe that. So we have a working alliance with the Evangelical Alliance of Ireland and with the Ahmadi Muslim community of Ireland on issues like secular schools and human rights. And, for example, when Atheist Ireland is involved with the United Nations, we have special consultant status at the United Nations, so we can engage with UN bodies on human rights issues. And, for example, when Pakistan was being questioned a few years back on their human rights record, we brought over a joint delegation from Atheist Ireland, the Evangelical Alliance and the Ahmadi Muslim community of Ireland to raise issues on behalf of minorities in Pakistan who can't speak out for themselves because they're persecuted, I mean, we're discriminated against in Ireland, but we're not persecuted in the way that religious and non-religious minorities are in some parts of the world. So I think it's important to for us all to understand, whether we're religious or atheist, for us all to understand that on most sides of most issues, most people are good people who are trying their best to lead a good life and get on with their lives based on whatever background they happen to have been born into and whatever beliefs they happen to grow up with. So I think it's important that when we do differ, that we differ respectfully, and that we discuss where we differ in terms of the issues, rather than attributing bad faith motivations to the people who disagree with us.
How do you find meaning and purpose in life by being an atheist?
Well, I suppose I don't find meaning and purpose by being an atheist, but my meaning and purpose is consistent with my atheism. It doesn't. I'll say it starts by, it doesn't come from supernaturalism. It all comes from, everything is natural. There's no reason to believe that there's anything outside of the natural world. And indeed, if there is something outside of the natural world, it doesn't matter, because if it's outside of the natural world, it doesn't influence the natural world. There would have to be some mechanism for it to interact with the natural world, and then to that extent it would be itself natural. That interaction would be part of nature. In terms of meaning, if you look at the various studies that have been done over the last few decades in the field of what's called positive psychology, and one of the things that they have found is that there are three elements to being happier. There's a kind of simplistic thing about happiness in terms of pleasure and pain. Maximize your pleasure and minimize your pain. But the difficulty that it has is that it suffers from what they call a hedonic treadmill. That if you get a kind of pleasure buzz out of something, you need a more extreme amount of it the next time to get the same buzz, and you're on this treadmill. But there are a few things that don't fall into that trap of the hedonic treadmill. One is relationships with other people. Having strong community relationships correlates very well with happiness on an ongoing basis. Second is being absorbed in activities that you're doing for their own sake rather than for a particular outcome. At its simplest, it's hobbies. And then the third, which is what you're referring to, is a sense of meaning and purpose. And that sense of meaning just really involves feeling connected with some sense of something that is wider than just yourself. Some people will get it out of religion, because religion is kind of tailored to meet those three things that are useful for well-being. So I try to get that sense of meaning and purpose by combining doing what I think is best with the absorption in activities and with relationships with other people. I think if you combine those three things together, that the sense of meaning kind of is part of that mix, and doing the other things helps to evolve and free up that's our strengthen, free up and then strengthen that sense of meaning. Now, I accept obviously that you can get those things from religion, but I think if you can get them without religion, you get them in a purest sense, because they're not complicated by commands from an imaginary creator of the universe that other people are interpreting from you and saying you have to do this. If you're getting your sense of meaning purely from internally from your own beliefs and your own life experiences, I think that's a stronger basis for having a sense of meaning, and you're more likely to be able to maintain your sense of meaning and to thrive on an ongoing basis if that sense of meaning is built on an inner foundation rather than on the foundation of somebody telling you that God is telling you to do this.
Michael is definitely onto something when he said you can find meaning and purpose from religion, but it might be best or even more pure when you find meaning and purpose outside of religion. And frankly, I agree with that. During this project, every person that I interviewed didn't have just one thing that brought meaning and purpose to their lives. They had other things that brought meaning and purpose into their lives. Looking back to what started this whole project, I realized that my entire meaning and purpose was securing a job. And when the job search took way longer than expected, I started to question my abilities. I was questioning my value. It is important to have a job, but at the time, that was the only thing that I thought that was going to bring meaning and purpose to my life, which is certainly not the only way to find meaning and purpose. After working on this project for 2.5 years, interviewing 22 people, recording over 20 hours of audio, and having spent even more countless hours editing these interviews, I like to think I have an idea on how one can find meaning and purpose in life. During these interviews, I noticed that no one was actively looking to find meaning and purpose. Rather, these people just went and did things that they liked and frankly just stuck with it. Finding meaning and purpose is something that you don't actively chase, and if you were to chase after meaning and purpose, it would always be evading you. However, if you don't do anything or wait for meaning and purpose to find you, you will never find it. You must go and do something. If you're struggling to find meaning and purpose, take a moment and think about your life. What do you like to do? What brings value to your life? And do you have anything to look forward to? If there isn't anything going on in your life, or if you don't know what you enjoy, go and try new things. Who knows what will bring meaning and purpose to your life?
My name is Jerry Gauss.
Corey Nathan.
Chris Gonzalez.
Michael Nugent, and this is how I find
How I find
How I find my meaning and purpose in life.